There's a few different tactics you can take to identify what skills you have that are transferable. One thing that can be extremely helpful is there's a number of assessments out there online that you can do where you lay out what your skills and talents are, and they can actually help you identify other roles where those skills might be applicable. So that's like one tactic, very much looking externally, allowing some of these assessments to help you better understand where your skills are most also appropriate, because they're the same types of skills that are expected for that role. It might have to do with your ability to understand complex issues, build complex models, be very technically sound, or someone who has really strong interpersonal skills or what have you. So assessments is one way to understand what your skills set is and which ones specifically are transferable to other spaces. Another technique would be to really take the time to work with a career coach or a mentor to understand and articulate your explicit and specific skills. At times when we're within an organization for a long time, we take on the company's jargon or language around how to describe our capabilities, and pulling that back into non-sort of context-specific language is also extremely important. So going through the exercise of actually having a mentor and or a career coach talk with you about the skills that you have collected, your experiences, and write those down, and I would say kind of create more plain layperson's terminology around them can be really helpful, because then when you go looking for a role, you're using the common language or something that's a little less fanciful and very kind of environment specific. And then lastly, I think it's about, there's lots of technology out there, I would say, but like when you're going through various role descriptions, I think the strongest role descriptions have removed some of that fanciful jargon and are really focused on getting to the core of things. And while you might not have read these job descriptions, or you might not have gone in thinking, oh, that makes sense, that's me on page or on paper, you can recognize, oh, actually, this is just the way we say this inside of X company, but it's the same skill or what have you. So then when you update your resume, you might make sure that it's actually more aligned. And so I think the way you identify those transferable skills, you can use skills assessments, you can work with your mentors and your manager, or not manager, but your mentors and your career coaches, and you can also take the time to study like a few different job postings to understand how people are talking about certain skills externally and bring that in. The only other thing that I would say is, through your network, through your community, asking people what they think about you and what skills you bring to things. I think you will be kind of surprised at times about what people see in you that maybe you're not doing the best job of acknowledging and raving about as something that would be really important in your next role. So the thing about the resume that I think is really important, and thinking about how you're going to communicate your transferable skills specifically on your resume to start with, is to ensure that your resume, doesn't have a lot of specific jargon to your previous organization. So I spent 5+ years at several of the companies I've worked at, and in that time frame, it's really easy to think about each one of my skills in the terminology and tone of that organization, as opposed to pulling out the basic core competencies and specific skills and impact in a way that anyone reading that resume would understand what that is, right? I do think the further into your career that you get, especially, it's really valuable at times to actually hire a resume writer that can help you distill that information down in a way that, again, pulls away from something that feels too jargony or feels very environment specific to something that is more broadly valued and understood. So a resume writer is very impactful, and going through that exercise of kind of, again, pulling away from that, and ensuring that when you are looking at certain jobs and roles, you are thinking about how you are articulating your skills through delivered results, delivered experience, et cetera, in your resume to make it very easy. If someone were to do a bit of a check against the job rec and your resume, they can see some clear matches or some clarity around your skills and what's being looked for, right? So make it plain as much as you can for those that are looking. And that's in the resume. As far as the interview, definitely ensure that you have taken the time to create your STAR stories. Most people are very familiar with this format, but it is the situation, task, action, results format with respect to laying out how you've done things, and ensure that your task and action, you highlight those transferable skills using the language that you saw on the job requisition online, as opposed to maybe, again, your fanciful language from the existing company that you work for. That's one tactic. Another thing can be to ensure that you're, again, just bringing that language into the conversation. When people ask, do you have any questions at the end of the conversation? Make sure that you ask questions. This is an important part of the interview. And through the way you ask questions, you can actually pepper in, I have this skill set that I think is extremely valuable to this role for these reasons. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you might be able to capitalize on that skill set that I'm bringing? So what you're doing is you're actually planting information for that interviewer to take into consideration. We'll talk about the interview at another point in this series as far as like career and like opportunity and how you should look at culture when you're actually getting to know an organization. But again, really thinking about using that time of asking questions or adding any additional points to help anchor more of those transferable skills into the mindset of your interviewer is another really great opportunity. And it's not necessary at every organization, and at times it can feel like it takes a lot of time and isn't very much valued, but in certain settings it is. There's a lot of value that comes in with a cover letter. So again, it is context specific. So that's a written document, but that cover letter is another opportunity for you to tell your story. So I just offer that as just like a bit of a bonus point or a bonus opportunity for you to think about how you articulate transferable skills and or impact that might be really relevant for this organization and the role that you're applying for.